Okay, well, good afternoon, everybody. We've still got others joining us, but welcome to today's session. We're delighted to be here and have so many people joining us from all over the world. We've had a fantastic level of uptake today, so a very warm welcome to you. So today's webinar is titled Why LPM Matters, and it's part of a campaign of activity that we're working on with a range of stakeholders and partners closely linked to the legal sector. And we're very much on a journey to raise the awareness of legal project management across the sector. So lots of activity on the horizon. I'm Gavin Spencer, as it says on the screen there. So I'm just going to say take two or three slides just to say a little bit about APM, who we are and what we do before I hand over to our guest speakers this afternoon. So APM, we're a not-for-profit educational charity formed in 1972. So for those of you who are good with your maths, we are celebrating our 50th year this year. So it's a big year for us at APM. We're headquartered in beautiful Princes Risborough in Buckinghamshire in the UK. And as it says on the screen there, we're the only chartered body representing the project profession in the world. So simply put, everything we do is very much focused on helping the project profession. So as it says there, APM 50th year for us. So there's lots of activity going on. We'll be reflecting on a lot of the big projects and some of the smaller projects that we've seen that have been very successful, that some which spring to mind: the London Olympics, obviously the COVID vaccine, the Channel Tunnel, or not as important as the others, but the £1 million Tottenham Hotspur football stadium, which opened in 2019. Classic slide here, just a few of our members. So we work with a range of cross-section of sectors, including government departments, construction companies, education, healthcare, legal services, financial services, the whole kit and caboodle. So today's webinar very much focused on the recently published ebook, which was titled Why Legal Project Management Matters, which was put together by our guest speaker, Hines of Wellingtone, and Simon Muller of Addleshaw, Goddard, who are here to talk today. So a bit of a quick overview of today's webinar. Vince and Simon will be covering the ins and outs of what legal project management is and how it differs from other project management. They'll be also talking about looking at hybrid approach, factoring in things like agile and waterfall methods, discussing some case studies, and then if we have time, which I'm sure we will, we'll then open up the session for questions at the end. So hopefully the technology's held up, and Simon and Vince should be there on the other side. Chaps, are you there?
Yes, Gavin, thank you very much. It's always a relief, isn't it?
It is.
We are listening, and hopefully you can see my slide. I've taken over presenting, and I will move on to a quick introduction from myself and Simon. Simon, would you like to go first? I know Simon's having some internet issues. He's not had any for ages, and then suddenly we have issues now, which is always the case. I guess I'll introduce myself, and hopefully Simon will come back. So I'm Vince Hines from Wellingtone. We're a project management consultancy based in Windsor. Work with clients across the UK and internationally. We are an APM accredited training provider. We have authored training in legal project management. It's the only training of its type that has been accredited by the APM. And we're also a Microsoft Gold partner and working with a number of law firms looking at the Power Platform and how that can be used to enable legal project management using very user-friendly tools configured for specific clients and their particular needs. I don't know whether, Simon, are you back? Simon is not back. That's fine. Simon is head of project management at Addleshaw Goddard, and we've been working. So Simon is my client, being candid. We've been working with Simon for some time, implementing legal project management throughout the firm, and that has included training a lot of fee earners across the firm at all various levels of the firm, which is one thing that we'll mention and we'll talk about. Before we get into that, it's important to say, well, what do we mean by LPM? What do we mean by legal project management? If you like, this is the life cycle of a matter, of a legal matter, from business development through to planning, delivery and close. So what we've identified is a number of stops along that tube journey where legal project management, if we say, what do we think legal project management is, for us, it certainly encompasses all these items. So providing training to colleagues about these elements is very key. And frankly, just in the same way that we would in project management in any other organisation, with a real focus on planning. Legal project management, there's a tendency to need to respond, jump in, react and get involved. But rather than just throwing buckets of water on the fire, we are looking to build a fire engine in the background whilst those initial legal activities are ongoing. So things like planning out our approach, agreeing scope with the client, defining budgets, and of course allocating resource. So when we talk about legal project management, these are the elements that we consider. Today we're not going to go through all of these items. Really want to focus on a couple of key concepts that we're keen to share with you and keen to get your view on as well. So within a matter, there's elements where we know what we're going to do. We can plan that work. There is a certain amount of certainty with that work. Within a legal matter, there's other areas where there's a high degree of uncertainty. We really don't know how the other side are going to respond. We might not know exactly what our client's view is as well. And we might not, of course, know what a judge's decision, we won't know what a judge's decision is going to be. So there's some areas of a matter where there's high uncertainty. So this concept of certainty versus uncertainty is the element that we really want to focus on today. He says, wondering if Simon is back, back on the call. Simon, are you there?
Well, I think he must have slipped out. Hopefully his internet will be back.
That's all right. We present these slides quite often together, so I'll fill in. It's my moment to shine. And so what we do know about legal project management, as I said, there's a firm we train, we engage with a lot of organisations from all sorts of different industries, and a lot of the challenges are very common. There is some specific nuances to legal matters, however, that possibly justify the special LPM, legal project management status, rather than it's just project management. Certainly recognising the important commercial element, a fair profit is needed, and balancing the work we're looking to achieve with our clients. Often in a traditional environment, we'd be talking about a sponsor that's within our own organisation, and here that the sponsor is very much within the client's organisation, changing the dynamic subtly. Of course, within legal matters, there's a huge variety and complexity of matters, and the pricing models have changed quite significantly over the last few years. What we've found is the interest in legal project management has grown and grown, as this hopefully as this webinar demonstrates, and some of that is driven by, as I said, pricing models, but also clients recognizing that they're running their own projects using project management. So why would we not manage matters in the same way? Within a law firm, we might say those leading the law firm may also not have a background in project management. It's worked very well for years. Why should we change? And lovely to have Simon back. So I've been feeling lovely, but lovely to have you back. I'm conscious that there's some technical issues. Simon, I'll have talked a little bit about this slide, but also from your perspective, typical challenges within the legal profession, possibly differentiated from other industries, and that justifies this label of project management.
Yeah, hi everyone. Apologies, I'm a bit late. Internet just cut out completely. Doesn't normally do that. I've never actually experienced that, so sorry about that. Just a quick intro about myself. I'm head of legal project management. Sorry, whoever is not on mute, please. Yeah, thank you. Head of legal project management at Addleshaw Goddard. Addleshaw Goddard, or AG, is sort of a medium-sized corporate law firm. Thank you, Vince. With a full spectrum of corporate services. So lots of examples there: corporate litigation, real estate, and various others. Most of our businesses in the UK, but we also have significant offices in the Middle East, Hong Kong, Singapore, and then in a few locations in Europe, and growing in Europe as well. AG is very process innovation, rethinking how we deliver services to our clients, and legal project management is very much part of that as well. Trying to be more efficient, deliver better client services, and constantly improve that. And what we'll be talking about today is very much part of that. Previously, I've been with DLA Piper, another large firm, and with Deloitte as a management consultant. So I have both a project background and a change background, which comes handy here, which we'll talk a little bit about in a moment. My role is obviously running projects with AG teams. It's also sometimes being an interim project manager with some of our key clients, so embedded in the client teams. I do a lot of change management, but that's a bit implicit in sort of developing the LPM approach that we have at AG. And we act as a project management center of excellence within the firm. So we advise others, and we help people, colleagues and clients improve their own project management. And training, of course, is a very important part of this. This would normally be my cue to Vince, but I'm sure Vince has introduced himself in the last 10 minutes. I
have, Simon, and I've talked through this slide as well. So, really, then the question really is, for you, why is LPM different to regular project management?
Yeah, so what makes legal a little bit special? Of course, we try to instill good project management practices like in other industries. So that's not so different. I think the context is and in the industry is a bit different. One thing is we deliver projects to clients, so it's very much client delivery. So it's not internal IT projects, for example, that we run. But there's a client dimension, which is very important. There's a profitability aspect, which is very important for us, of course, because that's how the firm makes its money. But it also means, so we have our own internal budget. We need to look at our own costs of running the project, but we also need to look at the client's budget. So the price of the project is essentially the client's budget that we need to stay within and manage their expectations. Also, because we are a full service firm and we have lots of clients from relatively small to very large and corporate. For example, the leading UK banks are among all our clients. There's a huge variety in size and complexity of the projects we do. So our approach to project management needs to flex to cater with that. Some typical challenges. I mean, the first point, lawyers, is a bit mean, of course. Of course, the lawyers themselves are not a challenge, but they are very specific type people to work with. They tend to be very clever, analytical specialist types who are not necessarily naturally most experienced in playing with large teams. They tend to be very good at what they do and very focused. And sometimes struggle with giving up control and delegating, which of course as a project manager we try to support the leads in a project. It can be a challenge. A lot of firms, I think, Vince, when I joined the call, you were just saying we're highly profitable. Well, exactly. So why would you change if it's been going really well? Then why would you bother change? So that can be an argument against change. Our clients are often lawyers, so some of the attitudes we find within the firm we also find with our clients, and they're not necessarily driving to innovation. It's different, like in what you might expect in a corporate organization where there's a project management culture and everyone is used to working in that way. there are certain set ways of working. Also, our firm structure, it's not command and control. You can't just tell people what to do. There's a high degree of independency. So firms make up their own ways how they run, and they can do that. There's no one centrally telling them what to do. So as a result, there can be quite a bit of resistance to change, or it feels like that, and you end up doing or it feels like you're doing lots of negotiation all the time to try persuade people to change ways of working and change the way how we approach project management.
And Simon, we've got an example here just to bring this to life a little bit. An example of a commercial litigation.
Yeah, so the types of projects we get involved in, and commercial litigation is often an example of that, is the type of project where you would have lots of stakeholders and resources to coordinate. I mean, that gives a lot of work where we can support as project managers. Cases where there's lots of data and documentation and data rooms to look after and to run, where there are lots of moving parts, so lots of planning and tracking needs, and also reporting, both for our own internal purposes and for the client. It can give a lot of work for project managers. So examples are like this one: commercial litigation or arbitration work, corporate work, particularly large M&A deals, give a lot of work for project managers. But also reviews of real estate portfolios, reworking of large amounts of leases or purchases of property, and things like legislation, regulation. So think of GDPR and Brexit. There's large volumes of work where firms, for example, have to change all their compliance processes for GDPR. Is an example of a project where it's good to have a legal project manager.
Okay.
Simon, do you mind? Are you taking questions at the end or as you go along?
I think our plan is to take questions at the end.
Okay, no problem.
But if you can, store them up, and we'll go through them all at the end, if that's okay.
Of course.
There was a question. Dee's put a question in the chat as well, which we'll come back to at the end as well. Simon, sorry, did you have something to say?
Yeah, and so to wrap up this one. So the variety of projects we have. What I said earlier, we sort of need an approach in project management that caters for all those different types of projects. Which is, if we go to the next slide, is where our hybrid approach comes in.
Yeah, so if I pick this up, so just terminology, the APM talks about different approaches of linear and iterative. For everyone on the call that might be more familiar with the terminology of waterfall and agile. And really what we're recognizing here is if within a legal matter, there are some areas, as I mentioned already, that we know what we're going to do, and we can plan that out using typical linear methods, planning out the work, identifying the tasks, allocate the tasks to people, have a clear understanding of what the scope is. So if we look outside the legal profession and say, well, hang on a minute, how does everyone else do it? Then we can very much lean on linear, waterfall, standard project management practices for those areas where there is certainty. In a similar way, if I asked you to build a hospital, here's a blueprint of the hospital. On day one, we're quite clear what the scope is, there or thereabouts. And what we're estimating, therefore, is to complete this known scope of work, let's estimate the time it's going to take, the tasks, how long they're going to take, and the resources, the costs associated with those tasks. That works quite well. What we then really want to think about is, okay, that works for a certain element of a legal matter, but there is no doubt there are other elements with a high degree of uncertainty. I mentioned some examples earlier on, and we're going to look at some in a minute. So again, it's useful to say, well, again, how do other industries deal with areas, projects where there is a high degree of uncertainty? How do other industries tackle that? And if we look into R&D in particular, I myself spent quite a lot of time saying pharmaceutical R&D. We know we can take a different approach. If we looked at developing an app, we know that people take a different approach, a more iterative approach. And this enables us to be more focused on a day-to-day basis, where we are estimating, in effect, what it is we're going to do. We're not so sure what we're going to do because we're not sure what our situation is going to be. What we do know is we've got a team of 3 people, and if we approach this work using the iterative approach based around time boxes, use the APM term, or sprints, then that approach, rather than working by burning platform to burning platform, we've taken a structured approach with iterative time boxes, agreeing at the beginning of, say, that week in particular, 1 week, maybe 2 week sprints, 1 week sprints, to understand at the beginning of that, what is the work that we're going to do, given our situation. We can prioritize that work, allocate that work to colleagues, and off we go. What we do know is during that week or 2 week period, if there is a significant change, we can go back to that planning activity, just as we would within a standard iterative project. So we can really lean on these proven techniques for those elements of a matter where there is a high degree of uncertainty. And of course, that requires education. The first challenge is to educate people on fee earners on standard linear project management, the concept of scoping, building a plan, forecasting, estimating, and then living that plan. Plan the work and work that plan. What we then find is actually we can take those at a possibly more senior level and also introduce them to iterative for those elements where there is a high degree of uncertainty. Just to build on this again, and probably just to colour this in, I think what we've got here is a list of standard activities that you might expect to see within a matter, from working with a client to understand what the scope of work is, through to court decisions and so on. And Simon, your view on these different items and their relative certainty versus uncertainty.
Yeah, so this is one of the exercises we do in training courses often, where we ask people to think of underlying sources of uncertainty, and so we've given 10 examples here, which have an impact on, to what extent you can manage your method towards more predictability, more certainty, or not. Some of these things we can do work to make them more certain and to start managing them in a waterfall type of way. Other items we can't, because they'll remain uncertain, or you would have to spend enormous amount of effort to try and manage them towards certainty. And then the exercise is we ask people to think of a simple project plan, quite like the case we looked at earlier. Break it down in components, and then for each of those parts, think which of these underlying elements of uncertainty have an impact on these components, and what you can do to manage. So I'll leave you 5 seconds to have a think about some of these items and whether you think they can be managed towards certainty, or whether they would remain uncertain.
So a quick test of your...
Quick test. So if you go to the next slide, Vince. So this is what we would typically find. Things like scope and budget, you can of course discuss with the client, you can write up, you can detail more, you can debate, discuss, you can amend throughout the course of a project or a matter. So you can make that quite certain, and therefore you can predict it, you can plan it, and you can approach it in quite a waterfall way of planning, of managing. Well, other examples like court decisions. The whole essence of the court decision is that another party, the court, is going to consider all your arguments and is going to arrive to some sort of decision, which is by definition uncertain for us. I mean, maybe in some countries you can bring a little suitcase of cash to sort of try influence that, but in the UK that's generally frowned upon. So the examples to the bottom you're less likely to influence, and the ones in the top you can manage to uncertainty. So the ones on the left are more likely, or you can approach with a waterfall type of approach. The ones to the left you can't. You have to be more iterative. You have to be ready to sort of change course if, for example, the court decision goes in a different way. You have to respond.
So if we go back to our planning, then we recognise, as we said, we've got activities that we can plan. We have a high degree of certainty. We know what we're going to do. The matter team can sit down together and plan out those activities. We can estimate their durations. We can allocate them to the appropriate skill and level of resource within the organisation. Tick, 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 good project management. We then recognise there's some areas where there's going to be much more uncertainty rather than management by chaos, rather than the fee earner being the superhero and potentially quite often enjoying the chaos to a degree because they can be that superhero. In actual fact, what we want to do is take a much more structured approach to dealing with those areas of high uncertainty, and this is where we would embrace iterative and use that so we can split any matter out by those elements and plan them in this way, those elements that can be managed in a different way, leading on, as I said, best practice, proven methods that are out there that are well used, well-trodden methods from other industries. So Simon, I guess if we go back to your example, commercial litigation, and see how that then is relevant to this example.
Yeah, exactly. So if you break this down, so you see the various activities and objectives within the case. This already looks quite like a waterfall approach. Actually, sort of there's a certain sequence in these activities, of course, but then some of these items here are more certain or can be managed towards certainty. For example, witness statements. We know the number of witnesses that we want to interview, the number of statements we want to develop. We tend to, we know who these people are, where they're based, when we can meet them. And we tend to prepare a lot of these witness statements in advance by looking at documents from the document disclosure. So we already kind of know what's going to be in those witness statements, and it's very much about fine-tuning them and again, getting it completely right and getting it backed up by the witness. But a lot of that is, has a fairly high, or we can get to a fairly high level of certainty in advance. Similarly, document disclosure, we roughly know how many documents there will be after a bit of work. We kind of know how quickly we can get through these documents. So that's also something you can plan out in a good amount of detail in advance. Things that we will always be less certain is sort of your claim and defense. We simply don't know what the other side, the counterparty, what their arguments will be, what sort of documents they will bring in. We don't know what they have up their sleeve. That's the whole point of a contentious process. And when they do disclose their information and their documents, we have to respond to that. And you basically get into scenario planning. What if they defend or make a claim on a certain point, or not, or go for other points. Another interesting thing is the impact of external factors. For example, we don't know the opponent's budget and their willingness to sit through the whole process. This might be the first case of a whole series of cases which are similar, and they will go absolutely hell for leather to absolutely try get everything out of this case, no matter what. We don't know that in advance. They might also be just sort of trying a little bit, see how far what they early on, trying to assess what they can get out of the case, but be quite happy to settle once they discover that it's going to be a difficult process for them. And of course, at the end, the outcome of the trial is always an uncertainty, going back to court decisions. So like that, you can bit by bit go through this and either plan it in a good amount of detail, going looking forward in a sort of a waterfall way, or you need to realize, okay, well, this could go 3 or 5 or 15 different ways, and you're basically into a little bit of scenario planning. You know, what's most likely to happen, but there will always be an element of uncertainty, and once it happens, you have to respond, and you need to be ready to respond in an iterative way.
Okay, thanks, Sam. So linking to that, of course, is the delight of change management or managing change. Law firms have been working the same way for many years. Why would we change, Simon? Why would we?
Why would we change? And really, the topic of 1 sec. It's a last little bit of COVID-19 coming out. There's really two topics to this presentation. One is very much around, what's LPM, how do you go about managing a project, but the other is a little bit of the story of how we implement LPM and how we change how the firm goes about running its projects, which is much more around change management. And so here I've tried to summarize some of the key points around change management that help change management. If you have all these things in place, it almost changes itself. It's sort of an obvious thing to happen. If none of these things are in place, then you're trying to sell cars to people without driving license. It's no point. It's never going to happen. So to just pick up some of these things. So timing, of course, it's a bit like a sales process. You're trying to persuade people. So if they're super busy, it's no point trying to change their approach, because they're just not going to have the headspace to take it in. There need to be perceived need or an issue is a strong perceived need. That's a good time to discuss how we approach things, because there's an urgency to it. Having it's important to have an existing network, good relationships with people internally. They might see you as a trusted advisor, and they might just sort of take your words for it to a certain extent and try things just because you suggest. That's a great place to be if you can get there. Showing good examples, demonstrating the benefits from previous cases is always extremely helpful. And then the last point, sort of education. If you have, like in a corporate environment, have people that are used to project managing projects in quite a structured way, you don't have to explain anything as a project manager, because that's just how we go about our projects. If the partners in this case don't know anything about project management, it's quite a lot harder to run it in a certain way, because they're learning as well. And I think this last point around education and around sort of the culture of project management is extremely important, and a very a key element of changing that within AG has very much been the training curriculum and the training courses that we've now delivered over the last sort of 3 years to about 500 colleagues or more. We're trying to get pretty much everyone into a training course at some point in their career, usually when they switch grades. And this has really been critical, because everyone has the same language in the same way how they think about project management. And when we start a new project or a new matter, then there's a shared context, there's a shared framework that people use, and we don't need to talk about project management itself so much anymore. It's more about how we're going to do it. So we'll go into project management rather than change management. This is what I've been working on with Vince for the last 3 years.
Summarised it so nicely. And yeah, so to finish up, we will open up for Q&A in a second or two. Well, just a bit of background context first. certainly for my firm, we got interested in legal project management quite a few years ago and recognised there was actually very little out there at the time in terms of best practice. There really wasn't. And so embracing best practice, regular, if you like, project management, one of the things that we did is we established a legal project management network with the APM, and as an output of that, we're very keen to use the APM competence framework to develop a competence assessment for LPMs and also a maturity assessment as well. So my firm, we are P3M3 Axelos consulting partner for P3M3 maturity assessments. I'm not suggesting we go that far, but what we have, again, with the APM over time is developed a maturity assessment, an LPM maturity assessment, where people can then assess, where are we? Typically by practice areas. As Simon says, if you've got buy-in from a partner or senior partner within a particular practice area, that's a great place to really push the message, demonstrate the benefits of LPM, and that then demonstrates to the wider firm. So as Gavin mentioned at the beginning, wrote an ebook. You're welcome to download it. There's the URL. And of course, we do legal project management training and technology solutions as well around LPM. So feel free to get in contact with me for either of those two items, just to discuss as much as anything else. But back to the topic, we did have a couple of questions, and I'm just going to go into the chat.
I think we had one from Dee first of all, so that was relating to budgets, and then I think we've got Aman who's possibly got a question. Then there's another one just come up in the chat there. So shall I leave the first one for you guys to pick up around budgets from Dee Tamlin?
Yeah, thanks, Gavin. Yeah, hi Dee, how are you? Good to have you on the call. And I suspect you know an answer on this as much as anyone else on the call, to be honest. But interesting to get a view. Talking budgets, has any firm set matter-related hours target for legal project management? Not saying anything's confidential, but Simon, in AG, is there a kind of a matter-related hour target set for LPM, or is it on a matter-by-matter basis?
So I think the amount of project management that you would typically see is anything between maybe 5 and 15% of the budget. If that is what you mean with the question, I think if it's a very standard volume-driven type matter where you can really sort of design a process and do the same process over and over again, for example, to develop the same type of document, you can keep the project management quite low. You can automate the reporting. That's not too, you don't need to interact with the client too much because it's a very predictable sort of process in a waterfall type of way. If it's I don't know, if you're supporting an innovative sort of process with a client, developing a new project, a new product or service, and it's a completely unpredictable process, no idea, and there's constantly new bits of work popping up left, right, and center. Your project management element of the budget might go up to 20% or more, just because there's constant engagement required to work out what has just happened and what needs to happen next. Is that an answer to your question, or are you did you mean something else?
It was a good answer. I did mean something slightly different, which was not necessarily sort of in context of the presentation, but just generally a question out to other LPMs, on the call as to whether there are matter-related hours targets set for LPMs in firms. So more of a general question, really, just for the chat, maybe not for a Q&A. But I did appreciate your answer and agree with your percentages when you're working on specific matters.
So we have a target utilisation of 80%.
Yeah, we have something similar. I mean, it's similar to sort of what our senior paralegals or associates or managing associates, their targets are similar for then LPCs or LPMs or senior LPMs.
Yeah. Great.
Lovely. Thanks. Armand, did you have another question that you wanted to ask yourself?
Not so much a question. First of all, thank you so much for doing this session. I think it's really, really good to get to raise the awareness in the way that you're doing it in collaboration with the APM. The only thing I would like to it's an observation, it's something that I know Dee knows is very close to my heart, but I think we need to be very cautious about over-egging this argument about legal project management being special. It's not special.
Everyone's special. Everyone's special, which means
yeah. Yes, I mean all the characteristics that you highlighted, Simon, are applicable across 5-6 different sectors. The only thing that is special about project management in law firms is the maturity of law firms. But then again, if you're coming from a consultancy background, you know that you adapt your maturity, your application, depending on the maturity of the client. So I don't think legal project management is special. And I think we really do need to be careful about putting that message across, because it's having a inflated impact on salaries, development, promotions, in all the wrong ways. So that's my personal observation, and I'd really like us to be more joined up at a peer group level to be sort of putting those messages out there. It's important, but it's not unique and it's not special.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation, that one. And clearly, any industry, if you looked in the rail industry, to work in the rail industry, you have to have rail experience. To work in the nuclear industry, you have to have nuclear experience. They're almost a similar sort of dynamic, where if we're talking about people within the legal profession who have the job title as legal project manager, one of the joys of my role is I work with lots of firms, and I see people who've been able to move very quickly between firms, increase their salaries beyond what one expects in any other industries, because they've got a year, 2 years, 3 years of LPM experience. The fundamentals of the principles are exactly the same. Where for any industry, there's that added element is the knowledge of the type of project that we're doing. So if I'm doing an IT project, it's useful to have an IT project manager who knows that application. So the same is true with legal. And what I've said to some firms really is that you could recruit, I'm going to say, normal project managers and train them to a degree in legal matters, so that they can bring the tools and techniques of best practice project management as experts in that, working alongside subject matter experts. And if I looked at different industries, a similar approach is taken. There's no doubt there are some subtleties that are different. Does it justify having its own arena? That's to be debated. There are some subtleties I think in the approach compared to other industries. But this kind of leads very nicely, segues onto Josh's question about being able to pivot from being a project manager in a different industry and getting into the legal profession. And I guess, I'm not from a law firm. My firm, we work with all sorts of different industries. And I would say the tools and techniques of best practice project management can be applied in any situation. What you're more likely to come across, however, is a lack of awareness or understanding from a law firm that is the case. So to be honest with you, just the same as if you worked in the rail or construction or whichever industry, there's a desire to bring in people who already understand the type of projects. So being able to talk the language of the legal profession and possibly get some training in legal matters would demonstrate an appetite and enthusiasm. And to be honest, I think for anyone who gets into the profession, once you're in, you're adding value, you're gaining experience, I think you become a very attractive commodity. But I'm going to ask Armand for your view on that, actually, if I may, Armand.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, some of you know that I've sort of come from a 20-year career in consultancy, but also worked across banking for 5 years and also rail infrastructure for the majority of those 20 years. So I think for me, I mean, look, was I a nuclear expert when I did nuclear decommissioning? No. When I worked for a major central bank, was I an expert in that? No. But what I did was I understood the client's environment, the client's requirements, what were the outcomes, and I had the foundations of APM as my background, as well as other toolkits, in my armory. But for me, it was always about understanding the client's needs, the client's environment, and what were the outcomes that you're looking for. I think you must never underestimate that you have got to, whatever environment you go into, be able to influence very quickly. So, in the consultancy world, which Simon can relate to, you're seen as an expensive resource, and you have to make your impact sometimes on the same day. Sometimes you're given the luxury of the week. But if they can't see your impact and value straight away, then you're not going to get invited back again. So I think it's about understanding your environment quickly, becoming knowledgeable in it, and working to Vince's points with the subject matter experts around you. But you've got to be competent, first of all, in project management, regardless of the sector or the environment you're in. If you haven't got the basics in place, then how can you build on the knowledge, the sector, the client, etc.
And not a plug to the APM, but a plug to the APM. The APM qualification, FQ, Project Fundamentals Qualification, and PMQ, Project Management Qualification, are the well-rounded qualifications that provide that foundation and expertise in project management. I'm less excited by Prince 2, I have to say, but that's another point.
I mean, sorry, because I know I've quite strong views on this. Michael, are you on the call? Michael Goddard?
I am indeed.
What are your views? Because I know we have this constant debates.
So the question I'll ask myself is, if I was recruiting for an LPM, would I employ Josh? And my answer is probably, if I'm swamped, I wouldn't, because I would want someone that has research experience, and to the points raised earlier is understanding what the legal matters are. So we had the deep dive with a practice with our projects group, and we're going to sell legal projects management to them. We did a deep dive of their matters, picked out the LPM activities within there, and we're able to present it to them in a language that they understood. It was an easy sell for us. So, and I think the point Vince is making is you need to be able to speak. You can't help me if you don't understand me. And we've said this is a piece of change management. So you're changing people that have been doing things for the past 500 years. And you want to come and say, okay, I've got PMQ and I'm going to make you more profitable. You have to have empathy for what they're doing. You need to understand and be able to articulate that you understand what they're doing. And if you can do that, then I think it is an easier sell.
I'll go to Josh first, and then to D. Josh, your thoughts on the answers you've received?
Yeah, thank you very much, all. I appreciate the time and effort that you guys have kind of spent to just kind of explain your perspectives on it. I guess a bit of context, I'm a kind of PM consultant within kind of construction, and in the past I've been interested in kind of looking into the legal industry full stop. I was looking to doing law as an undergraduate as well, and I'm interested. I think what prompted my question was that I think I've sometimes found it difficult to find some clarity on the best way to gain perhaps those skills that might be able to help you transfer into sector or across sector. And I think, having had your experience, your answers, I think it's very clear that you say actually you need to be able to demonstrate your aptitude, particularly given Michael's answer just now about how your PM is trying to muscle its way into an industry that's 500 years old. You need to be able to obviously talk the language, and I think that's really helpful. I think just the key is trying to create those opportunities for PMs who have got experience in project management to be able to kind of get the interest or the understanding, but have the exposure maybe to little bits of those inter sector differences. So I'd love to. I'm very interested in becoming an LPM at some point in my career. I'm still quite early on in my career. I'm working towards my chartership and MAPM and so on and so forth. But still, that won't help unless I try to find a way to get that legal understanding. So
Josh, I think don't overcomplicate it either. As I said, it's about every organisation has a language. Nuclear, rail, banking, law. It all just has a language. It's about. I'm not saying it's easy, but you just need to get familiar with the language and understand what the outcomes are going to be. Every organisation has processes. Every organisation has a set of common denominators, as I call them, around the stuff that makes it tick. understand, it's almost like being a consultant. Go in, land quickly, understand the environment, and then think about what are the outcomes each organization is trying to achieve. And that will come with time. But it's don't overcomplicate it. Language, familiarity with the organization, and what are they there in what are they in business to do.
And
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Sorry.
One thing for you to know, Josh, is on this call is a who's who of LPM people in the UK. So there's some leading practitioners on this call. So something for you to network with. But conscious Dee's got a hand up, Dee, and then Kevin. Dee, your point.
Yeah, so it was just in relation to Josh's question. Hi, Josh. Actually, my view is that we've got rooms full of lawyers who understand legal process. When I'm sitting in the office like this, certainly, there are lots of lawyers around. I actually want people who've got really good, solid project management capability. That's what I'm looking for when I'm looking to recruit a legal project manager, someone who has solid APM-based project management capability, for instance. The fact that you have got experience in the construction or infrastructure sectors doesn't exclude you from joining a legal project management team, because in fact, like the firm that I work for, we've got a big infrastructure practice and we've got a massive construction practice. And so the fact that you would already have the insight into construction and infrastructure and your project management experience is actually very attractive. You would no doubt in your day job where you are now have interacted with legal teams on projects that you've been working on. So you've actually got quite a lot of the package already that we're looking for. I think if law firms restricted themselves purely just to, attract an LPM that had disputes knowledge or an LPM that had, M&A knowledge, the pool of project LPMs isn't big enough for us to be so selective. I think bringing the diversity of thought of someone like Josh into a team like mine, I would welcome that.
And thanks, Steve. Before we just go to Kevin, the other point I'd like to make on that is that we also need fee earners themselves to embrace legal project management approaches, as well as bringing in professional legal project managers. So it's the industry as a whole. On the larger matters, we can afford it. It makes sense to bring in someone to do that role. But on smaller matters, it's something that the fee earners should be doing themselves as well. But Kevin, hello, Kevin. Good to see you.
Hi.
Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard some good points here. I think, Armin, when you mentioned that legal project management is not special, it's a generic skill, I agree with that. I think once you've got into a mature state where you're actually just running the process, absolutely, I agree with that. That said, I completely agree with Michael's statement that we're change managers. We're working with people who haven't given us a mandate to work with them, and they're expecting us to come in and sprinkle some gold dust. And that's what we are doing. We are moving them towards the end state, but that movement towards does require expertise beyond just being a generic project manager. And I think that's where when someone joins your team, joins your firm, there is a period of time to get up to speed, and that's beyond where you would normally find in an industry, because we're bringing people in and we're telling them this is how to change manage in this firm, in this place. So I think that's that thing. I definitely align with Dee. I always do, because ultimately we're working together on the LPM network to try and bring people into the industry, because we have got a shortage of project managers in this industry, of legal project managers, and the more we can bring in, recognizing that they have got skills in their previous working experience, and that for me the big factor of when I'm looking at candidates is always to say, have you got the energy in project management? Have you got this flexibility in the way in which you apply that? Because flexibility we require as change managers when we're up against some very, very professional experts who know how to do things, but we can help them to do it better, and that requires flexibility and an element of humbleness as well, frankly, because you can't just lock corns for people day in, day out. You have to walk in step with them.
And I think you're spot on, Kevin. The thing that that we've found when we've taken people who haven't come from a legal background is it just means we have to invest more time getting them up to speed with the culture, the organisation, and how things work, and also being very transparent and saying, look, you may have come from the rail sector or an infrastructure background where the maturity is much higher. Set your expectations differently. I mean, it doesn't mean to say we're behind. It means we're just starting our maturity at a different level. And it's about having that patience and going on that journey with us. So we're saying, having that conversation up front very early.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks, Kevin. I guess final point, Simon, if you had anything else to add to that, I guess within your firm, in terms of recruiting LPMs or any views on from an AG perspective, Simon?
I recognize all of that, and thank you all for your very valuable contributions. It's very interesting discussion to sort of hear of the experiences in other firms, and that that's sort of a shared understanding that it's not just project management, but there's a lot around that to take people along in the journey and in sort of a change management journey. Thank you, Josh, also for your question around how to enter from other industries. We're just running a very large arbitration case that has to do with construction, and I think you could probably, with a bit of adjustment and a bit of a learning curve, maybe in the first 3-4 months, you could probably do a great job there, because you would understand a lot of the content, a lot of the language on the construction side, and then the legal side is what you can pick up. Sometimes it's the other way around, but having people with different backgrounds in the team is super valuable, because we can learn from each other. I could probably learn lots and lots from you, from your background, so that's the other way around. So I definitely see opportunities there. No, I thought it was very, very interesting. Thank you, Vince. I'm looking forward to continuing our training courses in the coming months, years, perhaps.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. And I guess finally, Gavin, one of the things the APM is keen to be involved in or looking to do is continue to work with the legal profession. And we've talked about the competence framework. We've talked about LPM maturity assessments. These are things that we can build on based on the APM's standard competence framework, as an example.
Absolutely, yeah.
I guess final word to you, Gavin, if I may.
Yeah, well, thank you, everyone. I think it's been a really insightful event, really good questions, really interesting topic. And as you say, Vince, this is very much a part of a campaign of activity. So this isn't just a one-off webinar. We're really getting behind this as a campaign. So I love the fact that, Vince, I think you said it's a who's who around LPM on the call today, and it very much is. So my call to do action really is asking you guys to help us on this journey, because we want to run more webinars. We've got articles coming out in the project magazine, and we want to get to a stage where we're running some face-to-face events as well. So your input really is vital for this, and we just want to continue on this journey and raise the awareness. So I'll send out a survey, I think, post-event, and by all means, if you want to get involved, we'd love you to. But I'll put my contact details in the chat, and I think really that's just it from me. But I think it's been really insightful. Thank you, everyone.